What's up, everybody? Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson, back with you from RotoWire. We are on to week 15 already of the fantasy season. That means we're in the playoffs in most leagues. And thankfully, Jeff, it also means we are done with bye weeks. Hopefully you survived the 6 teams on bye in week 14. We got reinforcements coming. We'll give you some ads to make at each position. Not that there's a ton of appealing quarterbacks out there, Jeff, but we'll start there. We'll give you some running backs. We'll give you receivers, and we'll give you tight ends. Where are we looking at quarterback right now in deeper leagues and super flex, 2 QB leagues?
I'm looking at Bryce Young again. He held his own against the Eagles. I was pretty impressed with that. I think better times are to be had there with Carolina. I feel like they're kind of steering it in the right direction. At least maybe they don't know for sure, okay, this is a second contract guy. But this is also, okay, this isn't Sam Darnold on the Jets. This isn't, Josh Rosen on the Cardinals. They know they don't have to move on next year. And he's actually playing well. He gets you a few yards with his feet. He's not going to have nearly as tough of a matchup as he did this week against the Eagles. I think he's usable in a pinch.
I think so too. And again, hopefully you're not in a pinch because, in theory, everybody should be available in week 15. But we did have some injuries as well. So if you are in a 2 quarterback league, if you need to pick somebody up, these are all desperation ads. I want to make that very clear, but it looks like Jake Haener will likely be taking over for Derek Carr. Confirmed fractured non-throwing hand for Carr. There's been some talk of him perhaps landing on IR. Even if that doesn't happen, I think it's pretty unlikely that he would play at least during the rest of the fantasy season. The Raiders are going to be on to Desmond Ridder with Aiden O'Connell getting carted off on Sunday. So those are 2 guys who should be available just about everywhere. And if you really want to get dirty, Jeff, if you want to make some speculative ads, maybe you're in like a 3 quarterback league and you need somebody who could potentially step in. At some point, the Jets could bench Aaron Rodgers. There's been talk of it for a few weeks now. I don't know if it happens or not. Their season's officially over. Tyrod Taylor is sitting there as the guy who would take over. So if you really are in a deep format and want to make an ad on him, you could. And then the calls for Michael Penix are going to continue to come. I don't think Kirk Cousins did a whole lot to assuage that this past week.
Yeah, better, but not great. Still no more touchdown passes there, 2 more interceptions. Rodgers and Cousins were the subject of Jay Glazer feeds, though, on Sunday morning. In both cases, in the case of Rodgers, they want him to finish the year as the starter. He's been, apparently the hamstring issue that he had way back in week 2 is way more serious than it alluded to. And, to Rodgers' credit, he threw for over 300 yards for the first time all year against the Dolphins last week. Raheem Morris, in the case of Cousins versus Penix, was vehement that they weren't going to make a change. They weren't considering it. Peter Schrager reported that Penix took no snaps with the first team. So probably not going to see a change unless and until the Falcons just straight up get eliminated. They went from, if they fully blow the division, then I think they look at that change.
Let's move on to running backs. We got some names here, and I think we need to start with that high-flying Las Vegas Raiders rushing attack.
Yeah, Sincere McCormick had almost all the carries this past week. I don't see that changing. I see against the Falcons here, I see him probably being the guy. I'm hoping, maybe I'm just wish casting that another starting running back into existence. We actually got a little bit of relief this week. In week 14 of all weeks, the Bipocalypse, we got all these running backs that kind of stepped in and were pickupable and startable and actually cashed in a little bit there. But McCormick, he got almost all the work there. Amir Abdullah was just kind of an afterthought in this game against the Bucs, and against the Falcons, I expect more of the same.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, we're still waiting on some sort of concrete update on Madison and White. They've both been sidelined for multiple games. Who knows if or when they're back at this point in the year. And you mentioned it. I mean, McCormick outsnapped Abdullah 41-26, carried 15 times to just 1 for Amir Abdullah. Tank Bigsby still out there in a lot of leagues. He outsnapped Travis Etienne 31-28, outcarried him 18-4. Of course, Etienne had the better fantasy day in PPR with some pass catching. I'm not really all that interested in Jaguars not named Evan Ingram or Brian Thomas. It's going to be Mac Jones the rest of the way. They played the Jets, the Raiders, and the Titans to finish out the season. Just, not good teams, but not great fantasy matchups either. I want to mention Kendre Miller again, got the first touchdown of the game on Sunday against the Giants. Still going to play behind Alvin Kamara, but they've made it very, very clear that they want to get Kendre Miller involved. Played 17 snaps in his return from IR. I think we see that number rise. Saints are cooked at this point. I think you want to get a look at younger players. But again, Derek Carr likely done for the year. So maybe that just lowers the overall ceiling of this offense the rest of the way.
Absolutely. And then I'll throw in the Niners. Isaac Guerrero left with a foot injury very late in that game. The Niners turn around and play on Thursday this week against the Rams. Huge, kind of critical game, especially for the Rams, actually, after their win over the Bills. But Patrick Taylor is next in line. They've gone through, they've gone through McCaffrey, they've gone through Mason. If Garendo's hurt, Mitchell early in the season too. So that's like 4 running backs taken off the top there. I don't think it'll be a full on like Taylor gets everything, but he did get a late touchdown. Keyshawn Vaughn's the other name you want to keep in mind there too. It might be tough for Garendo to play with the quick turnaround unless it's just a total precautionary removal of the game.
Yeah, I am hoping and praying that he's available, but they're saying it could be a foot sprain for Garendo. And again, on a short week, I think it's 50-50 at best that he's out there. I think you have to consider Isaiah Davis in deeper leagues. Ended up splitting snaps, carries, targets almost exactly equally with Braylon Allen this past week. I think there's a chance, Breece Hall misses at least another game, if not the rest of the season. I know the Jets have said otherwise, but just why would you push it at this point with Breece Hall? So somebody to consider out in New York. Kimani Vidal, another rookie that we've been monitoring. Gus Edwards, led the Chargers in carries on Sunday night, but Vidal led them in snaps and routes run. Herbert didn't really target the running backs at all in that loss to KC, so not too many takeaways there, but another young guy to monitor. And then I have on my list, Jeff, whoever the Panthers pick up, because Jonathan Brooks officially has retorn the same ACL that he tore in college, so he'll obviously be done for the year. Raheem Blackshear was in the hospital after yesterday's game against the Eagles. Miles Sanders is on IR. Obviously, they have Chuba Hubbard, but somebody else is going to have to be in the mix there. Should be pretty heavy Chuba the rest of the way, but if you're looking for some insurance in the Carolina backfield, keep an eye on who they add this week.
I agree, and they should be invested in trying to give Chuba a little bit of work off. They've signed him to a long-term deal now. Their season is kind of cooked. I mean, they're playing better ball right now. But at the same time, there's no real incentive. Like, they're not driving for a playoff spot. They're not driving for a winning record even to try to build for next year. They should try to back off of Hubbard, if anything. So, yeah, I agree. Whoever they pick up should be interesting.
I think that's a really good point by you. Keep an eye on that this week. Before we get to receivers, if you're enjoying this video or any videos on our channel, please make sure you give it a like. Please make sure you're subscribed to the RotoWire YouTube channel. We'll keep bringing you a ton of content every week through the season, through the playoffs, everything you need to kind of make this final push in the fantasy season. Let's talk wide receivers, Jeff. Who do you got at the top of your list?
Jeez, I struggle to find wide receivers this week, Nick. I'm not going to lie. Like, Quentin Johnston's at the top of my list, but he's 40% rostered. So, like, in the leagues that you and I mostly play in, he's already rostered. Joshua Palmer might be there. And this is assuming Ladd McConkey doesn't even play this week, which we can't necessarily assume on a Monday. How about Ray McCloud? Another guy that's getting a lot more targets, is available in most like non-NFFC formats, at least, where we have 20-man rosters. 8 catches yesterday, critical kickoff fumble, but still, and he's had multiple fumbles this year. The Carolina game, he also had a really bad fumble too. But he's getting a lot of work. He's getting the work that we thought Kyle Pitts was going to get.
10 targets this last week for McCloud, and this Falcons defense is just not good. They're going to keep playing shootouts, I think, the rest of the way. So I think that volume should be there. You mentioned Josh Palmer, obviously benefited on Sunday night without Ladd McConkey. Felt like McConkey was close to playing, so I think there's a good chance he's back this week, but still has to be in consideration, even if McConkey does play. The Chargers get the Buccaneers, the Broncos, and the Patriots to finish out the fantasy season. So Tampa Bay secondary is terrible. Denver just gave up a million big plays to the Browns last week. New England's New England, so there are some decent matchups there. I would check for Elijah Moore on your waiver wire. It's coming off a down game, but did have 14 targets against Denver a couple weeks ago, had big games against New Orleans, the Chargers, the Ravens, all with Jameis Winston starting. I think Cleveland's going to continue to be this high volume passing team. It's kind of the only option they have. They do play the Bengals, by the way, in week 16. The only thing I would worry about, though, is Kevin Stefanski was not exactly committal that Jameis Winston would be the guy the rest of the way. So at some point they could turn to DTR, which would concern me for any of these pass catchers.
Yep. We've had this beautiful Jerry Jeudy resurgence, and we're going to kill it off by starting DTR instead of Jameis. It's going to be terrible.
Yeah, I don't really get it. I also have Jalen McMillan on my list. 2 touchdowns on Sunday, team high 7 targets. It's got 3 games with at least 7 targets this year. I would double check for Adam Thielen. He'll be rostered in most competitive leagues, but still out there in a lot of ESPN leagues right now. 21 targets over the last 2 games, 17 for 201 and a touchdown in that span. Gets a good matchup against Dallas, then Arizona and Tampa Bay to close out the fantasy season. So 3 pretty good spots for him. And then I would also check on Rashod Bateman, assuming he's healthy this week. I don't think Deontay Johnson is going to have a say the rest of the year for the Ravens. I think that's
Agreed.
just going to go down as kind of a bust acquisition. And, Bateman's not high volume. The passing game for Baltimore could be hit or miss, but, if you're really desperate or you're in a deeper format, I think he's worth at least adding.
Yeah. Watch the health because he did get hurt in that game against the Eagles.
Yep. All right, tight ends, Jeff. I know it was not exactly a fruitful week at receiver, but do we have anything at tight end?
No, not really. It's Juwan Johnson again, but it's going to be not Derek Carr throwing him the ball. So he's 8% rostered in Yahoo. So at least there's that. Grant Calcaterra is 2% rostered. Got his first touchdown this past week, but it was like 3 catches. So, there's always reasons to kind of quell my enthusiasm. It's a tough position to begin with. Will Dissly got hurt. Michael Mayer led the Raiders in targets last week, but do we really think that's sustainable? I don't.
I do not either. You mentioned the 3 guys on my list, Johnson, Calcaterra, and Mayer. I will say, with Desmond Ridder stepping in, you oftentimes see these young, bad quarterbacks, kind of checking it down to tight ends. They become really tight end heavy. That was the case for Mac Jones with Jacksonville these last few starts. So, maybe there's some sustainability for Mayer, but, there's this might be the only time, like in his entire career, that he outproduces Brock Bowers in a given week the rest of the way. So, yeah, not exactly a bounty of options at tight end. I mean, I guess if Will Dissly misses time, maybe Stone Smartt emerges as an option just because there is some chemistry with Herbert. They don't have a ton of weapons, but yeah, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel a little bit this week. We'll wrap it up there. Those are all of our favorite sneaky ads at quarterback, running back, receiver, and tight end. Again, please give this video a like if you're watching along, and make sure you are subscribed to the RotoWire YouTube channel. That way you won't miss any of our content the rest of the way. Lastly, go check out rotowire.com/try, TRY. That'll get you free access to everything on our site, our projections, all of our tools, the RotoWire picks tool as well. rotowire.com/try.